You've used the word a couple times, psychometrics. For those of us who don't know what that is, tell us what that is.
Psychometric, so it talks about psychometric assessments. And when someone tells you something is a psychometric tool, they're talking about this tool has psychometric properties. Mm-hmm. And psychometric properties are that it's valid, reliable, fair, non-biased. So these four, those are the main things that we're looking at in psychometric. So if someone's telling you, use my psychometric tool, you should be able to ask them, okay.
Question.
Give me some data on that. Yeah.
There's a number of them. How many? I think somebody recently told me there's up to 20 different ones, maybe even more.
20 different psychometric tools?
Yeah.
Oh gosh, in the hundreds.
Hundreds, really? Okay.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the big ones that most people might? Enneagram, I think, is one of them, right?
If we're talking about personality alone,
yeah.
So there's different buckets in psychometrics or psychometric testing. See that a psychometric tool measures a psychological construct. And psychological constructs are either personality, problem solving, and integrity.
Okay.
If we just look on personality tools, there are two main different models of personality that we're working with. So either we're working with the Ocean, which is the acronym for the Big Five, or we're working with the type indicators like the MBTI. You get the JTI, which is a spin-off from that. Then you also get the Enneagram, but often not seen as a personality tool because it looks at different aspects. So I wouldn't really see that as a personality measure at all. No.
Now, I'm American, so I've had some exposure, some bureaucratic exposure, some military exposure, some American corporate exposure to some of these models. One of the questions I saw recently in a podcast that I was watching, I also watch podcasts, was the discussion of the legitimacy of some of these models. Would you like to share any of your thoughts there? How does one know if one of these psychometric models is legitimate or?
It's a very good question. There's a huge bucket to unload there. I think a lot of them are legitimate, but not used legitimately. So there's that one problem. And then the other one is, again, you look for the psychometric properties of the tool. Okay. There's a minimum range that a psychometric tool has to meet with regards to reliability and validity.
We last week we kind of went through it, right? We looked at I think it was called the validity score, and what was the second one again?
Reliability.
The reliability.
So a lot of companies come and say, yeah, but my tool has very high levels of reliability. Reliability is how reliable is the tool. But if you look at the statistics, as soon as you put it online, it automatically becomes reliable because the user experiences the tool exactly the same over and over again. Mm-hmm. So once I put a tool from paper pencil, when we moved onto online, the reliability scores went up. So because the instructions are always the same, the environment mostly is always the same, the outcome's always the same. So that's almost guaranteed. That's why when someone goes, oh, look at our reliability score, I go, good for you. Is it online? Yes. Okay. Of course, it's going to be high. The score that you should be really interested in is the validity score. Okay. Validity means, is it testing what it's supposed to be testing, and how well does it do so? So
now, what's the range for the validity score? From 1 to?
We go in point scores for validity. Anything from 0.4 upwards is acceptable. And if you look at what that actually means, it means that up to 40%, you should be able to predict what you want to predict.
So you have a score. You have a score of like 1 to 10 or 0 to 100. And if you're at 40%, which is an interesting thing that I picked up in our discussion last week, if you're at 40%, you're already in the better range of models for this. Is that correct?
Yes. So let's take a scale of assertiveness, for example. If you can predict assertiveness as a behavior up to 40% of the time, then it has psychometric properties. Yeah. And I think once I learned that, I thought, is that it?
Yeah, 40 doesn't sound like a lot, does it?
Yeah. So I'm not a professor, and I'm sure many people will go, actually, it's this score, but in general, it's around 0.4 for most of the psychometric tools that I've seen. And then it all depends on which context it's used. So to increase the validity, you actually need to make it pretty context specific for its use. And if you can do that, then through that, you increase the validity of the tool. So a blanket tool for all, is not something that I would recommend. Context needs to be taken in consideration, job, roles, environment, culture, as much as possible, and the need, and then start basing decisions on that, because the baseline isn't very strong when it comes to personality assessments.
Okay.